Good morning, everybody. Um, Hopefully everyone's doing okay. It's being Friday and all, end of a very, very long week, at least on my end. Very, very long week, and I am tired. Um, but I figured we'd take a short break from all the stuff that's been going on in the world socially to try and refocus a few things. Um, and it's ironic because I had been tagged in a video by I don't know how many of you remember Tux. You remember Jimmy Tux, the guy that came on the platform, the bald atheist guy. Anyway, he tagged me in a video he did, and about the fallacies of the beliefs that Christians have. Um, I haven't watched it yet. I am going to. I just have not watched it yet. I caught a couple of glimpses of it, but I hadn't been able to. I knew I was tagged, but I wasn't able to see the video until this morning. So I finally saw that he had put it together and put my the channel in the description. But I had just found it weird that the topic today was going to be about what we believe and why. And he just happens to post a video 11 days ago about the silliness of it. And so, in the spirit of being silly, we will go over some of the things that I think we have all too often as believers, is that what we call ourselves, forgotten. We forgot. And I think we need to be reminded of some things. Um, we love to talk about the blessings. We love to talk about the overall end result, salvation. We love to talk about grace. But I don't think many of us understand the amount of grace that we were given. I think many of us forget the level to which he went for grace to be extended. I think we forget that we are not all that and a bag of chips, and that we were indeed deserving of certain things, even the things that he got. Yes, I own a copy of it. I watched it when it released in theaters, and I had made it a habit watching it every year, once a year. Um, and then I didn't do it anymore, and I still haven't. And I had a reason for it. Um, at the time, I was, um, for all intents and purposes, seeing it, but it wasn't having any impact on me. It was more of a gore obsession. Let's put it like that. It felt good to release a tear over somebody getting whipped like that, but it wasn't having any spiritual impact on me. Um, and I don't think it had a lot of deep spiritual impact on many. It had a emotional impact, short lived for some, long lived for others. But I did not. It didn't do the effect that it was supposed to by changing one's heart. It didn't change my heart. It made me sad and upset and mad, and kind of brought me close to the decision, but it didn't make me make the choice. Um, but I had intentions of showing the scene, but then I remembered, no, you're gonna get a copyright strike for that. Don't do that. So I'm not gonna do that. Um, but I will go into details about some things here. Go ahead and ask you a question, Donna, before I get cooking real quick. Because once we get moving into this, it is gonna get um, it's gonna get rough. But I think it's essential for us to really kind of dive into this, because I think we have just for a while now gone away from the reality of what he did on the cross, but more so what led up to it. That's going to be the crazier part. Um, we're going to start off with a picture while Donna's procuring her question. This is a flagrum. Okay. Now, there were a few flagrum types back in the day. This is one of the more generally used ones. Um, the ones that they say that was used on Jesus was a lot more threads to it. Glass and stone and steel were tied into the knots. Um, so it was a little bit more vicious than the others had been. Um, and the thorns that they used, the steel thorns that they used, were a little bit longer. And we'll see an example of the one that they almost 100% believe was used. But I wanted to show you a picture, and just for a minute, have you imagine that you were due this particular punishment, because we were. We were in a position that if God were to ever let us be the ones to get what we deserve, it'd be problematic. Yes, Don, I still use it, but I use it in my personal. I don't do it online. I haven't been able to find it to bring it up on screen yet, so I do. Um, but this particular question we may have to pose to ourselves is whether or not we are so complacent with the replacement of Christ in our place that we just don't even think about what actually happened, and it was actually due us, and he took it. I don't think that ever really settles home for many, which is why we always keep saying, well, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. It's not that, it's just a, I'm a sinner, but I'm not that far gone. The smallest amount of activity is not what gets you the punishment. It's the state before God that gets you the punishment. No matter how little bad you do or how much bad you do, without coming to Christ, you're due the same punishment. You're going to end up in the same spot. So this flagrum is one that was used many times. And so what we're going to read first is the account. We are going to read the account and go from there. All right. Let me bring this up. Get this page back properly here. All right. We're going to be reading the account out of Luke 22. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teacher of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. If you are the Messiah, they said, tell us. Jesus answered, if I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. They all asked, are you the Son of God? He replied, you say that I am. Then they said, why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips. Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, we have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah, a king. Now, we know that to be patently false. That is a straight up unequivocated lie that they told, because even in their questioning, he had sent his disciples out to check the fish, and the coin came out, and he said, whose face is on the coin? And they said, Caesar's. And he said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's. He had no issue with them paying taxes because it belonged to Caesar. He came to represent the kingdom of heaven, not the kingdom of Rome or a human kingdom with the Jews. He didn't come for that. So that right off the top was a blatant, unequivocated lie by the Pharisees. So then Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of Jews?" And he said, "You have said so." Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted he stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and he's and has come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him, dressing him in an elegant robe, then sent back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. Pilate, together with the chief priests and rulers of the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charge against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him." But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man, release Barabbas to us." Barabbas had been thrown into prison for insurrection in the city and for murder. Oddly enough, the thing that were trying to accuse Jesus of. Isn't that weird? Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished and then released him." But with loud shouts, they demanded that he be crucified. And their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. As the soldiers led him away, they seized Simon of Cyrene, who was on his way from the country, and put a cross on him and made him carried behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed. Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children, for a time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the childless women and wombs that have never borne, and the breasts that have never nursed.'" Now, we are going to enter into the part that is really crazy, I guess is what the word you would use, and neglected by many. And this is the part that will really get, I think, us to start thinking about it. The more I think about this, the harder it becomes. In John 19, there's another description. So then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him, and the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe. Then they said, "Hail, King of the Jews," and they struck him with their hands. Pilate then went out again and said to them, "Behold, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him." Then Jesus came out wearing a crown of thorns and a purple robe, and Pilate said to them, "Behold, the man." Now, this was after the flogging that he gave him. Now, they said scourged. Okay, so we're going to get into the scourged idea. And this is a point where they get to the crucify, 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 crucify. Now, on the surface, scourging doesn't sound like a whole lot just by listening to the word. But we're going to try and get into the definition of it. Scourging was a painful infliction of punishment. Um, it was supposed to be a sobering reminder to the person getting flogged of their position. The intent was to inflict as much pain as possible with the intent of not killing just yet. Typically, it was either a scourging or a crucifixion, and very rarely it's a scourging and the crucifixion. There were some people that got it, of course, scourging and crucifixion, and some didn't live through the scourging to get to the crucifixion. The ones that did survive died very quickly. Um, the ones that didn't um, get a large amount of the scourging and went to the cross sometimes could last days without food, couldn't breathe, and most of them died from asphyxiation, water in the lungs, carbon dioxide, um, or just their body collapsing under the weight of the liquids that would start to develop inside of the lungs. But the scourging that Jesus underwent was a long one, and we'll show you the breakdown of that and what it really entailed real quick. And then we'll come back to a showing of what it does when you use these particular instruments.
But we would be remiss if we didn't describe the actual process itself. Be warned that what follows is a graphic recounting of the Roman process of crucifixion. Crucifixion ended on a cross, but it didn't begin there. First, on the morning of the execution, the condemned individual would be stripped naked and scourged, whipped across the back and chest with a multi-ended leather whip resembling a cat o' nine tails. Depending on the force used by the executioner, scourging could remove significant amounts of flesh and sometimes killed the condemned before they made it to a cross. Next, the condemned was driven naked through the city and forced to carry the heavy transverse beam of their cross to the place of execution, all while being whipped and pelted with stones from the crowd. The entire ritual was carried out in the city proper to ensure that as many people as possible saw the dehumanized victim to maximize humiliation. They were led to a prominent public location. In Rome, it was right outside the Esquiline Gate, where officials placed signs denoting the individual and their specific crime. Finally, they were attached to the cross by nails or rope.
Now, something to remember here is that this was public, this was seen, and whatever transgression you committed was told. Now, I want you to kind of imprint that on yourself. Had this been us in his place because we deserved it, all of our sin would be displayed for all to see while we were enduring the punishment due for that sin. Any transgression that we had, big, small, whatever it is that incurred that punishment, would be blasted. It would be shown, it'd be known, and then you'd be killed. So you would die in many ways. You'd die physically, but you would die politically, you'd die socially. Everything about you would be dehumanized. You weren't dressed, you were bleeding, you were shown as weak, you were carrying the instrument on which you had to be laid, and everyone was privy to your downfall. We forget that this was supposed to be us. That's what we don't like to think about.
There remains scholarly debate about how often nails were used in crucifixion, as iron was expensive, and few extant remains of crucifixion nails have been unearthed by archaeologists. Most evidence, however, suggests that nails were used more often than not, one nail through the overlapping feet and a nail through each wrist between the bones of the forearm, the radius and ulna. Contrary to common depiction, a crucified person would not have typically had nails through the palms of the hands, as the tissue and bones of the hands are too weak to support the weight of an adult and would have torn. It is possible, however, that nails through the palm could have been combined with rope around the wrist, and some evidence supports the idea that this practice was used sometimes. None of this could have been accomplished easily or quickly. Driving a nail through flesh and bone would have taken repeated swings of the hammer. The process would have been slow, clumsy, and intimately agonizing. The relative absence of nails leads scholars to believe that they were reused time and again, though some may have disappeared from the archaeological record as Romans viewed crucifixion nails as powerful healing charms.
So I want you to take into mind this also. If they did indeed reuse nails, which history seems to suggest they did, you're looking at a rusted, non fully formed nail, most of the time probably not sharp. By the time Jesus came around, the act had been around for, I think, almost 60 years. They had perfected it almost. And if they had used nails that were used already, the sharpness of that tip would have been gone. You're talking about hammering a blunt, singular piece of metal through the forearm, wrist area, and hammering it into wood when it wasn't ready to penetrate because it wasn't sharp enough. So now you've gone through the arm, taking with it whatever it is without slicing it, had to press through it. Then you had to keep hammering through a rusted nail into wood as it shaved going through, scraping sinew and nerve endings in the wrist. Each hand, then the feet. I don't know how many of you have ever stepped on something sharp. I don't know how many of you have had something fall on the top of your foot, whether that be a plate, pan, or even a screw, a knife, something fall on your feet, the top of your feet, and how much you remember that hurt. Now just imagine you've been whipped and you're laying on a splintered piece of wood and you feel a rusted, blunt nail on the top of your foot. And all you can do is see someone raising a mallet and bringing it down, and you feel the most incomprehensible pain you possibly can shoot all the way to the top of your brainstem. And they keep hammering, and it goes through one, out the bottom, through the next, out the bottom, and they keep hammering until it goes into the wood. We deserve that. He didn't. We were due that. He wasn't.
Legionaries would sometimes keep nails for themselves or sell them to merchants so they could be ground into powder for use in ceremonies. The eager consumption of these relics of death by Rome's civilian population drives home just how generally accepted the practice was, even if it was considered unsuitable dinner conversation. With the victim affixed to the cross, crucifixion entered its final stage when the condemned would be left to die slowly over a period of several days. The physical pain during this process would have been intense, as the entire weight of the exhausted individual pulled on the nails or ropes that bound them to the cross, causing excruciating pain in the arms, legs, and torso.
Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been tired or your legs can't keep you up. Um, I don't know how many of you have been so exhausted that your body just simply cannot go any further. And you have to lie down or you will collapse. Now imagine that you cannot lie down and you are at your wit's end with your energy. And every time you relax, you feel as though you're going to lose your hands. And then as soon as you relax, you also feel your feet being ripped. And then you can't breathe because your lungs are collapsing and filling with liquid from the beating. Now you can't put your hands down to your side. Usually the first thing we do at the sign of pain is fall into the fetal position to try and comfort ourselves. There was none of that. You were left bare, and you had to either stand or let your body fall and suffocate.
Not only were they subjected to the elements like the sun, rain, and wind, each individual breath was in agony. To allow a full inhalation, victims had to raise themselves up against the beam of the cross, increasing pressure against their ropes or nails, and scraping the bare flesh of their flayed back against the coarse wood of the cross. By the time thirst and hunger set in, the victim had doubtlessly long been wishing for death, but that could still be days away. The process pushed the human body to the brink, meaning that the causes of death among crucifixion victims could vary widely. Blood loss from the scourging was a common killer and may have been the ultimate cause of Jesus' death, as he died after only several hours on the cross. Some died by asphyxiation due to the difficulty of inhaling while suspended, and others perished due to the buildup of carbon dioxide in the blood from an inability to properly exhale. The unimaginable stress that this process placed on the body was such that it could, and at least once did, prove fatal even to a person who'd been taken down from the cross alive. Josephus writes that he was once able to convince the Emperor Titus to free 3 men who had been crucified, but 2 of them eventually died from their wounds despite being cared for by the best doctors available.
And when I was sent by Titus.
Now, that is what he endured. But even then, you hear it and you see the part of the cross and the significance of it. We understand that. We hear all the time of the cross, the cross, the cross. But what happened prior to the cross makes the cross that much worse. It makes it that much worse. Now I'm going to show you 2 different things. One, I'm going to show you a flogging on what it would look like on flesh. Now, what they're using is just a piece of pork, a leg from a pig. It's the closest to our human flesh that you can get. And they're not using a flagrum. They're using just a whip with knots on the rope. That's all they're using. A whip, just like the flagrum, without all the appending stuff, all the nails and the shells and none of that's on there. Just rope knotted. Please remember, this is just rope. This is not what they used on Jesus. This would be the light version. Okay.
The knots of the cat sliced through skin. One eyewitness account described a beating. His back resembles so much putrefied liver, and every stroke of the cat brings away congealed blood. And the boatswain's mates are looked at with the eye of a hawk to see they do their duty and clear the cat's tail after every stroke, the blood at the time streaming through their fingers.
Punishment has got to be severe enough so that everyone else looks at you and thinks, I'm not having that done to me.
Now, mind you, that's just a whip. The whip alone, with pressure, with knots on it, breaks skin, removes flesh. Jesus endured this before being taken to the cross. And then we have an actual depiction of what the part itself looked like and the damage it will do. He's going to use a different target, a cardboard box. But please just watch what happens.
And beat him with it. Now what you have in this is a leather whip. This is actually an exact replica to the best of our knowledge. There's only one guy in the world who makes these. And you have lead weights, and then kind of cemented or molded into the lead weights are nails, pieces of glass, and bones. And this is what the Roman centurions would use to beat him, or anyone. Now, the severity is not mentioned in the Gospels, but we know, even from the practice and from history of what's described, that it was actually quite severe. When 1 Peter 2:24 says, by whose stripes you are healed. Actually, that word stripes is a word that's very descriptive historically, in that it describes a very severe beating, very deep bleeding wounds into the flesh. Just be thinking about which one you think might be worse, the 3 or the 9. So I'm going to demonstrate this for you. And remember that this is cardboard. Cardboard is much thicker than skin.
Now watch this. He's not going to hit this very hard.
The one with the 3. Now what actually happens with this one can actually be worse because it's lighter. The speed that when it hits is actually faster, and it can inflict more damage. I'll pick these up.
Now, I want you, because I think it's about time we start being honest with ourselves. Maybe this will tell you why I get so mad at people that seem so frivolous with the concept of Christianity and how much they abuse the concept of Christ. And this is why I get mad. People wonder if I'm acting outside of what the Christians should be behaving like. But I think many of them that get upset, especially if they call themselves Christians, seem to forget something. They seem to forget that this was something that actually happened to the person they call their savior. They seem to forget that what he went through was actually for us. And when you come with your stupidity, you expect me to just be docile about it. I'm sorry, that's not here. You have to imagine yourself in this position. Otherwise, you will never understand the gravity of what happened on that cross. Every hit from the very first one took with it chunks. He was walking around with more than likely innards showing through his body. Wasn't just a few cuts, wasn't just some swelling. We're talking about pieces of his back, chest, stomach removed. From every slap of that whip. And when they pulled it back, you're talking about ripping out chunks of flesh, ripping out sinews, making it even more difficult to walk. The occasional stray hit that would hit his forearm, shoulder, groin, thigh while tied up to a post. Then they took him off the floor, dragging him, and pressed sharp thorns into the top of his head, and then threw cloth on the wounds and had him stand. Stand and be spoken about and to, while they let go somebody who actually deserved that. Then they had him carry that beam. So he can't walk properly. He's bleeding out. They're not stopping the bleeding. Then he has to carry something all the way to the point where he has bodily failure, and someone else has to help him with it, just for them to have them lay on it with the wounds open on a splintered piece of wood, rough, calloused. They're not putting him on some sort of a smooth, nice piece of black walnut, oiled down. None of that. So now you have open wounds, and you have splinters going into those wounds. And once he's on his back, then they proceed to use those nails. Once those nails were in, then they hoisted him up and dropped the cross into the ground. So now you have weakness, abuse to the body, open wounds, splinters in your back. They lift you up and they drop you so that your body scrapes going down into the wood. And the body's first reaction would be to try and push away from it, but it can't because the feet are nailed to it and so are the arms, and they don't have the strength to pull you away from the splintered wood. So you drop, and then you try to stand up, and you can't. Every time you push up, you drop. And every time you drop, you lose more air. What they would do subsequently is, after a few hours, if they thought the people on the cross were taking too long to die, they would walk by and break the legs of the person being crucified so they could not lift themselves up. And if they were to try, they would have to do it with their arms pulling, and you can't move your hand. So you're having to go straight up, almost impossible. So now you're rotating the inside of your wrist like this onto a nail. You're just doing this, rotating it. Rotate, rotate. This stays fixed here, and all you're doing is rotating your arm, and it keeps grinding on the inside of your wrist. A rusted piece of steel. So you have to fight either the pain in the wrist or the inability to breathe. You have to pick one. Stay down or rise up. But even when you rise up, you still lose. Then they come and break your leg so you can't stand up. Then for sure, you drown in your bodily fluids. And they were about to do that. They broke the other two that were with him there. And by the time they came to him, he was already gone. Which fulfilled the scripture of not a bone shall be broken. And mind you, all this time that he's up there, his ears still work. And the people he's doing it for hate him. The people he's replacing hate him. And they're screaming it at the top of their lungs that they hate him and asking him to hurry up and die. And that should have been us. But God's going to give you a new car. God's going to give you a house. God's going to give you money. God's going to bless you from here to there, up and down, inside out. God's an ATM. God going to give you spiritual gifts. God going to give you this. God, it's always about us. Except when it comes to dying. It's no longer about us. It's about him. That's when and now it's definitely about him. You want everything that he offers except that. We want everything he offers but that. We want to participate in all of the glory, participate in all of the wonders, participate in all of that, but we do not want to be crucified. When he told us that we should die to ourselves, and people keep wondering, what does that look like? I think he showed you already. It's not supposed to be a pleasant event. It's death. What is it in us that makes us believe that we are not supposed to get this? In any case, we can ignore all the things we want. We could ignore it. We could try our best to not want to endure it. We could try to say that he already did it. But let's not play ignorant and coy and somehow feel that what he did was of so little consequence that we just relegate it to, I go to church on Sunday, I hang out with the believers, and I get a blessing. We relegate it to the most superficial, silly things. We forget. We forget that our Lord endured that for hours. Hours he endured. It was pretty much the whole day he went through this. And what do? Nothing. We keep talking about all the things he's supposed to give us. Give, gimme. I get. In any case, it is why I get mad. So I will stay that way. Because contrary to popular belief, This is supposed to stay in the forefront of our mind. This is supposed to be at the very front of your mind. Every time, this is supposed to stay in the front of your mind. Remind yourself that you were due what he got, and he did take it on your behalf, so you wouldn't. We actually deserved way more. I just want you all to understand something. Christianity is not a cop-out. It is not an excuse, and it should never be used as such. It is the understanding that I was supposed to be dead physically, permanently, without any hope until Jesus. And that changed everything. And once that changed, I'll be back Monday, God willing. Savage will be on today. I'm going to close a little bit differently today, not with the usual exit strategy. Scrolling at the bottom, you know what to do. You consult God. Whatever has happened, happens. If you don't think anything else, remember what we were due, what we weren't given, and what he took. That's the biggest I can ask you, because once you realize that, very few things are going to matter as much as that. Not saying they won't matter, they won't affect you, but they won't matter as much as that. So I will leave you with this, and we'll catch you guys on Monday. Love y'all. Mean it. Wisdom calls to you from the street. So please, please, please find wisdom. Peace.
Through the gates of Jerusalem's walls, parents of our Lord came in, unaware what future calls. They gave their all through thick and thin, giving all they could and more, taking steps on sacred ground, leaving all they had before. In his love they were found. Before the dawn's first light, before the morning song, in the quiet of the night, their faith stood strong. Through the heart of the Holy Land, guided by a greater plan, hand in hand they'd understand, trusting in the Son of Man. Shadows cast by ancient stones, echoes of a promise made. In their hearts his love has grown. Through the trials they've stayed. Before the dawn's first light, before the morning song, in the quiet first light, before the morning song. In the quiet of the night, their faith stood strong. Through the heart of the Holy Land, guided by a greater plan, hand in hand they'd understand, trusting in the Son of Man. Trusting in the Son of Man. Shadows cast by ancient stones, echoes of a promise made. In their hearts His love has grown. Through the trials they've stayed. Before it began, it was finished. Before we saw His body diminished, before the world knew He was here, before it all, it was finished, finished.